Credible messengers, we're here with the incredible, phenomenal, insatiable Devi Ward. How are you today, my sister?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
No worries, my sister. I'm so happy you're here and honored by your work. I'm so inspired by all your subscribers and just the powerful content that you're able to publish and produce on a daily basis. You're doing a phenomenal job, my sister, and I salute you.
Thank you.
No worries. So I want to just jump right in. How has your lived experience informed your work?
That is a great question. So right now I'm a tantric sex educator. That's what I do. And this wasn't something I planned on. It was a big surprise for me. It literally fell into my lap. And looking back, I can see how my life prepared me for this position, but it wasn't something that I was pursuing. I would say that my lived experience currently informs my work simply because of the profundity of the healing journey that I had to undergo in order to do what I'm doing today. So, for me, it's less of a personal thing. I mean, I do have a history of trauma, and that informs my work. But I think overall, what really drives me in the work that I do is when I began uncovering a lot of our cultural programs and our cultural conditioning and our culturally integrated shame around our sexuality. That's what really inspires me. So it's less about me, a personal thing for me. It's more about us as a culture. And I personally feel infuriated that we are conditioned from the time that we're children to feel shame and guilt and fear about one of the most beautiful expressions of being a human being. Yeah. So when I encountered that within myself, I was completely unwilling to allow that to continue for other people. And so that's why I continue to speak out so loudly, so strongly, so proudly, because I revolt against the idea that other people are telling us what is and isn't appropriate in regards to our basic, beautiful human expression. Does that make sense?
That's beautiful. That makes more than sense, my sis. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that answer. So let me ask you the question. Do you believe that sex is sacred?
I believe that every part of life is sacred. I believe that pooping is sacred. Every part. How could we as human beings are sacred. How could anything that we do, think, or say be anything less than sacred?
So you use the word tantra. For our viewers that don't know, what is tantra exactly?
Well, that depends on who you speak to, quite frankly. There are a variety of different styles, and there's a variety of different lineages of practice, shall we say. The style of tantra that I practice is Tibetan tantra, and that is based in Tibetan tantric Buddhist practices. And so ultimately what tantra is when it's actually tantra, not just like what we call neo-tantra or sacred sexuality. When it's real tantra, it's yoga with the purpose of catalyzing profound transformation of consciousness and healing and awakening body, mind, and spirit. So it incorporates meditation practices, it incorporates movement practices, it incorporates sexual practices. It's yoga for body, mind, and spirit, with the ultimate goal being the full realization of enlightenment. That's the highest goal of Tantra.
Man, that's beautiful. So if you had the ability to go back in time and speak to 16-year-old Devi Ward, that's brilliant goddess, could you identify one lesson, one practical skill set that you would want to just convey to this young sister now that you have this wealth and abundance of information and knowledge of self?
Yes, the biggest thing I'd want to convey to my 16-year-old self is to begin understanding the impact of trauma and to start and get counseling. Because a lot of what I've had to undo to get to where I'm at now is simply the impact of trauma in the nervous system and the debilitating effect that it has. And so it's been a lot of work correcting that. And so if I'd started when I was 16, I would have had a lot less work to do. And I think, in regards to trauma, that's something that's not well known, the impact of it. And how it truly has a debilitating impact upon our development as human beings and our ability to realize our full potential as human beings. And so it's very much not clearly understood in this culture. And so I think the more information we have about it, we can recognize the signs and symptoms, and then we can treat those symptoms. In my opinion, a lot of people, a lot of kids, children that are considered to be bad kids, that sort of thing, are simply acting out PTSD. right? Which is a symptom of trauma. And there's a variety of causes of trauma. I mean, male circumcision, infant circumcision at birth, huge trauma. So we have this culture of men running around that are deeply traumatized from the time they're born. And that alters the functioning of the nervous system. And we don't recognize those things as a culture. So we think sexual violence and aggression are normal things, but they're actually symptoms of trauma. So for myself, some of the behaviors that I engaged in when I was younger, which weren't quite healthy, were simply symptomatic of trauma. And if I had had people in my environment who had been educated about that, we could have circumvented a lot of, damage that I had to undo later on in my life. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
This is my second last question for you. And it's more around just the evolution of consciousness in your work. You have a powerful message. You've been sharing it with thousands of people, and you've had a profound impact. Where do you see this level of communication going now that we're in the era of social media? Internet is only 25 years old, still a baby, and we have all these platforms manifesting like Blab, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Periscope. Where do you see your work going, and how do you see yourself also evolving towards to be able to communicate your message in more effective and more consistent ways?
Yeah, well, we're actually in the process of creating a variety of internet-based programs to be able to offer this type of sacred sex tantric education on a more worldwide scale. We already have some things in place, and we're just continuing to use the technology to spread the message and make it accessible for people in areas where it simply isn't very accessible currently. Ultimately as well, I mean, one of my passionate goals is to be in a position to be able to go in person into marginalized communities all over the world and be able to work with people in person and share these teachings, and then have the online platform to be able to support the continuity of their practice. So, I think technology is great. And on the other hand, I'm going to say there's no substitute for human connection. So I believe technology is a wonderful tool to be able to access resources that we otherwise wouldn't necessarily be able to access. But on the ground, in person, like one-on-one or hands-on training or one-on-one hands-on practice with other people in your community is where that growth really integrates and really, really becomes tangible.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, my sister. So my last question is, how do folks subscribe? What's your call to action? How do folks follow you and get involved in the powerful movement that you have created?
Yes, wonderful. Thanks for asking. So I actually have 2 websites. And right now our free offering is the same on both websites. And I'm really excited about it. I filmed this a couple of years ago, but the information is incredibly pertinent. It's a free female orgasm guide. And what it does is it explains the top 3 blocks preventing women and their partners from having the pleasure and orgasms that they desire. So a little thing about orgasm. I do a lot of focus on orgasm, and that's because in our lineage of Tibetan Tantric Buddhism, every orgasm is a glimpse of enlightenment. Right? So orgasm itself is one of the quickest, fastest paths to realizing and transforming your consciousness. So we like to give everybody the tools that they need to not just have like little tiny orgasms, but to really bask in the experience of awakened, enlightened consciousness for as long as possible, as often as possible. So my video guide offers 3 tips to accessing that, cultivating that in your everyday life. And you can find that at Devi Ward Tantra. I'll spell it for you, DEVIWARD, tantra.com. And the other website is Authentic Tantra. And they're both linked in sync. They're both Devi Ward. So there we go.
Thank you so much for my sister, Devi Ward. You are a credible messenger. And to all my viewers watching, whatever you desire, you truly deserve. Thank you so much, my sister. Will you come back and join us one day?
Absolutely. I'd be thrilled and honored.
Thank you so much, fam.